Hey, welcome to Joy and Olives. This is Jasmine, your faithful host. I don't know. Okay, honestly, I don't even like calling myself a host because this isn't exactly your typical podcast. This is more of an audio diary, and I do go back to listen on these episodes because mainly I record them for me. I don't really advertise this podcast too much, but I am grateful for those of you who do want to listen in. And I was not going to record a podcast today. I actually just finished a bike ride around the reservoir right by my house. It was beautiful. And I took the afternoon to do that because a lot's been on my mind, This is a milestone year for me. I turned 30 almost half a year ago. And, in this year of 2026, I realized that for the last 25 years, or you know what, maybe even longer, I have been holding on to the pain of rejection. And some of you know my story that my dad left my mom and I when I was 2.5. And it was not a traumatic breakup. My parents did not get into physical or verbal arguments that I remember. I honestly can only recall one argument that happened in front of me my entire life. And of course, there were like little conflicts here and there. And there was really only one major fight, and that's it. So I've been spared a lot of the pain that other kids have gone through when their parents were not getting along. So I grew up fortunate in that way, and I also was never fully estranged from my father because he was always around, and I did have a relationship with him. But there were some things that he said or indirectly did that scarred me. So one of them was when my mom and I moved. We left California. We moved back to Singapore when I was very young. My dad was actually very happy about that, and he didn't want us living too close to him. And of course, he framed it by saying that he felt it would be better if my mom and I lived in Asia, closer to her family, that Singapore was a safer country. And I believe he genuinely meant those things. But for me, as a young, very, 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 very young child, I interpreted that to mean that my dad finds me a burden and that my dad doesn't want me to be in his life. Or that he would rather not have me in his life. So that becomes a wound that became a wound in my heart that I carried for years, honestly. And so we eventually did move back to California, and I did end up moving back to the same city that my dad lived in. And I did have a good relationship with my dad. Like many dads, he didn't know how to express himself all the time, but he made time for me. He bought me things that I wanted, that I needed. He was there at my school events. Like, he really was present. But of course, there were times where I still felt like a burden to him, and that maybe my dad would have rathered that I wasn't born. So yeah, I I think I dealt with that wound by never addressing it, because honestly, I always compared myself with people that seemed to be in a worse off situation. I had known of children that grew up in sexually abusive homes, or homes that where they experienced physical abuse, homes where the divorce was very violent and they remembered all the details. Like, I didn't have that. So in my mind, I never thought I needed to heal from anything. So I projected this persona to myself that nothing was wrong with me, that I wasn't hurt by anything, and that I generally had a lot more to be thankful for than not, which is still true. I still have so much more to be thankful for, but not addressing a wound, especially a childhood wound, is not the way to heal. And I was really blessed, honestly, that I had amazing friendships growing up. I had an amazing mother. I still have an amazing mother. I had you can hear the thunder. And I had and still have amazing leaders in my church. I mean, if it weren't for my community, I may have had to address this wound much earlier. But I had so many people who loved and accepted me that it was easy for me to ignore, the rejection that I carried in my heart as a child. And so now that I'm 30, I am in the very fortunate position of being in a PhD program. And I know I've complained, I have bemoaned the difficulty and the challenges of doing a PhD. And it isn't easy, but it has also afforded me a flexible schedule where I get to manage how much I do each day. And I also get to choose, this is not the part that I can choose. I cannot choose the fact that I am working independently most of the time, because this is an independent project. So I can't choose that, but I can choose to work from home. I can choose to work from wherever I would like to in the world for the most part. And because of that, I have had so much more alone time in the last 4 years than I have ever had. Sorry, I've only been in the PhD 3.5 years. 3.5 years than I've ever had at any moment in my life that I can recall. And because my social life has been limited, it has forced me to spend a lot more time in deep reflection. And I'm so glad that it's happening now and maybe not earlier, because maybe if I was afforded this much time as a younger person, I may have not even had the maturity to deconstruct my emotional and thought life the way that I can now as a more mature person. And so now that I've been able to spend time doing that, I've been able to grieve the lack of a father that I've had in my own earthly dad. And I celebrate the amazing moments we've had. But I've never grieved that I never had the earthly dad that I really wanted. Secondly, I grieve the fact that as a child, I believed the lie that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't worthy of a dad who loved me enough to choose to do life with me. Yeah, I grieved that. I believed that for so many years. And I grieve the fact that when I have faced rejection, particularly from the opposite sex at times, that I have interpreted that to mean that my dad leaving me was right, that maybe there is something wrong, that I'm not worthy of someone really cherishing me. And yeah, just like all dawned on me today that these are just the insidious things that I have believed about myself and haven't realized it. Now, I will say that I don't think I've believed this at all times, but I think beneath the surface of a very joyful Jasmine, and I still am, there have been this lingering darkness that I've never brought light to. And Jesus says that I am the light of the world. And I really believe that even as Christians, we are fully healed and free, but we are as free as we want to be. And when we don't open these doors, I see my heart as a like a house with a lot of doors, a lot of different doors. And when I let Jesus into my heart, that was me opening the front door and letting him in, and he's welcome. But there are other rooms where those doors have been closed, and I've never invited the Lord into those rooms. And he's such a gentleman, and he won't barge in, but he will use circumstances in my life to show me that, hey, maybe I haven't allowed him into the rooms that need fixing. And obviously, like my God will not force my dad to be a father that he doesn't want to be, or he's not ready to be. So healing does not mean that God suddenly changes, the people that we think that have hurt us, who have hurt us, and he changes them so that they suddenly love us the way we want to be loved. But I think healing means that the Lord comes into those rooms, and in these rooms there are projectors, and these projectors are projecting a film on the screen, and that screen is replaying and replaying and replaying scenes from our lives that we have never fully dealt with, and maybe we don't want to watch this film again. But like it or not, it's been replaying in our hearts without us realizing it, because we've never faced it. We've never faced the pain. And I'm so glad that Jesus is so willing and wanting to watch this with us and to reframe our perspective. You see, when I replay my childhood and the pain of my dad walking away, I'm watching it from the eyes of 2.5, 3-year-old, 4-year-old whose only way of looking at that is to think that something's wrong with me, or something's wrong with my mom, something's wrong with us. And when I invite Jesus in, he's showing me that it's not that something was ever wrong with us. Not that we are perfect. I know I wasn't a perfect child, but it's not that's not the real issue. And And when I can approach it that way, I see that, wow, my dad's rejection of me was not a curse. It was actually a blessing because, first of all, I realize that I'm not alone, that I can identify with a whole lot of people who have had imperfect parents and who are still going through that pain. I can identify with that now. I understand to a certain degree what real rejection feels like. And I believe that when we are rejected by our family members, it hits closer to home than any other form of rejection. And it can make trusting people in future relationships more difficult. And I understand that. And secondly, it has made me so much closer to God than not. And I'm not saying that people who have never had rejection can't experience closeness with God. No, they absolutely can. But the comfort that I have felt from God all of these years, like honestly, when I look back at the last 30 years of my life, I know He was there. I really see His favor on me. I see His tenderness toward me, even when I didn't acknowledge Him. If you listen to past episodes, I don't think I was really a Christian who understood the grace of God until I was around 11 or 12 years old. And it was only at that age that I recognized my own wretchedness, that I realized how amazing His grace was. And finally, from this, I've realized that my dad and all the people who have rejected me for various reasons, they are as much in need of compassion, if not more compassion, than I am. I think that rejection is a double-edged sword, and on one hand, it can make us more confident and anchored in the love of Jesus Christ. But on the other hand, it can really make us feel sorry for ourselves. And I have chosen to feel sorry for myself in various ways. And I've chosen to deal with it in an unhealthy way. Sometimes, and a lot of times, by seeking affirmation in other relationships, when honestly, that was never another person's role. It was never God's intention for someone to come in to fill the void that my dad left in my heart. On one hand, I can have compassion on myself and say, wow, I was born with a human heart that experiences the full range of emotion when it feels let down by someone I trusted. But on the other hand, I can also have compassion on the person who walked away, because they walked away due to their own pain, their own traumas that they've been carrying, that they have not allowed God to nurse, to heal. And because of that, they are simply allowing that trauma to play out in a way that hurts another human being. And I genuinely see that now. So it takes this pain that I've been viewing in a two-dimensional way, and I feel like the Lord's been giving me like a four-dimensional way of looking at this, that it's not just about me, it's not just about my mom, but it's also about my dad, his past, and it's also about why he doesn't feel like he can live up to the role of being a father at this time. So yeah, and it's also changing the way that I view my relationships with people. I've been asking myself if I have used some people without realizing it to fill a void, and if I have, that I'm so sorry. And again, right, like it's because of the pain that I've not dealt with but am now choosing to deal with, and I didn't even realize it. So I'm here. I chose to come to a really special spot for me. It's a little rooftop garden on the 26th floor, and it's the year 2026. And yeah, I'm just recording this for myself to remember that the child Jasmine, the little girl that was once so confused and so broken by what happened to her, is still within me. I believe that little Jasmine is always going to be there, but I, as the grown-up Jasmine now, can look at little Jasmine with eyes of tenderness, with love, the way Jesus would look at me. And I can say, Jasmine, this does not define you, and you are not defined by this anymore. And you can choose to close the door now. You've watched the scene. The Lord has entered this room. And yeah, you don't have to replay this and feel sad, but you can replay it and feel proud of the fact that you face this, proud that you're no longer ashamed to admit that you come from a broken home, because that doesn't mean you're broken at all. It simply means that you were allowed this experience, and you learned from a young age that there are some people who are called to be in your life, but who may choose not to journey with you. And if they don't, the Lord has other plans, and you're not shortchanged in any way. And He will continue to bring about reconciliation between you and your dad. I mean, I still have a great relationship with him, so that's something to be grateful for. And there is healing that will continue to take place there. But in the meantime, you are a whole person, because before you were even born, before you even knew who your parents were, He was with you. And Jesus was the one giving you life. And in Him was life. And the life was the light of men. And He's the one who makes me Jasmine Ashley Colano. That's who I am. I was already whole before I even came into the world. And yes, I came into a broken world, But the brokenness of the world does not define me unless I allow it to. And today, May the 7th, 2026, I say aloud to an audience of none except for me and Jesus that I do not allow this to define me anymore. That, yeah, I'm walking away from self-pity and from feeling small and powerless over this situation. And I choose to love who I was at that age. I choose to see myself as not a lonely little girl, but someone whom the Lord knew, and the Lord knew this would happen to me, but He never left me. And He knew that May 7th, 2026 would be a day that would come, would be the day that I would verbally acknowledge that I need Him so much in this area of my life. And He will take this broken part of my story and turn it into something that something that gives me life rather than darkness. Yeah. And I can pray. I can continue to talk about it with others. And I think by sharing this with whoever's listening, you are part of my healing story now, because I've chosen to share this with you. And it's something that I've not really talked about a lot. Like I said, it's something that used to bring a lot of shame and condemnation. And I realized that has fueled unhealthy lifestyle choices that I've made in the past. So this is not the end. I think there will be more stories that I will share on the podcast in the future in relation to this aspect of my life. But this is the start of a new story, a new page, and I'm grateful. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.